Saturday, October 16, 2010, 6:40 p.m., Mojave National Preserve, San Bernardino County, California. The sun is down behind the Black Mesas. Dana Whitaker and her adult daughter, Mara, should be packing up a legal campsite near Kelbaker Road. By 7:30 p.m., their phones stop transmitting. Their truck does not ping a single tower again. What happened to Dana, and why did the trail die here? 11 years later, in 2021, a trace will surface in desert stone. It will contradict the earliest paperwork. It will force a file back open. The timeline never fit. It breaks again. Adam Whitaker did not accept a quiet ending. On that October night in 2010, he was 22, the son who stayed home to finish a shift in Redlands. He called both lines after 9 p.m. No answer. At 10:18 p.m., he filed a missing persons report with San Bernardino County. Deputies checked the obvious pullouts on Kelbaker Road and along Kelsosima. They found nothing. The next morning, rangers flew the preserve in a fixed-wing pass. No tent, no truck, no signal mirror flash. It should have been routine. It became a void. Search logs show the first week was heavy. Air and ground covered the legal camp corridors. SAR teams walked arroyos off cinder cone lava beds and Collins Dry Lake. They marked water caches, footprints that turned out to be hikers, and a discarded cooler with no prints. Data mattered more than hope. There was not enough data. By week 3, volunteer numbers fell. The case file shifted to maintenance mode. Lieutenant Henry Collins kept it on a shelf with other desert disappearances. He read it again each quarter, checking for mismatched dates or misdrawn lines. Dana's banking stopped the day she vanished. Her license was clean. There was no insurance windfall. That kind of silence should have been loud. Adam built his own system. He mapped every search pass, every false lead, every rumor about abandoned mine shafts. He taught himself to download free satellite imagery. He logged vehicle tracks after storms. He saved for a ground-penetrating radar rental but never got enough. When he could not search, he studied. When he studied, he wrote questions for Collins. In early May 2021, Adam called his friend, Cole Ramirez. Cole had the Jeep, the jack, the water plan, and a rule: no heroics. They started at dawn from Baker, drove south, then cut east along pipeline service lanes. At 11:06 a.m., they lost signal. Cole pinned an offline waypoint and set a turnaround time. The heat pushed them back into the shade in short bursts. They worked in grids, 20 minutes on, 5 minutes off. Adam swept a cheap metal detector across crusted ground, listening for bottle caps or wire, kept him moving in straight lines. At 1:42 p.m., they reached a break in the basalt. The cut dropped into a narrow wash choked by saltbush. Adam saw it before he named it. A hard flash inside the shadow. He lay flat an inch to the lip. Below, half buried and flipped, a vehicle skin caught the light. He did not shout a name. He looked for marks. The side panel that faced up showed a faded club decal. 3 small peaks inside a triangle. His mother liked that sticker. He had placed it on her tailgate in 2009. Cole pulled him back from the edge. They took photographs with the phone cameras set to maximum zoom. They did not climb. The walls sloughed sand and pea gravel. Cole marked the coordinates on his offline map and set a second waypoint 300 yards west at safer ground. They retreated in measured steps, called out distances, and checked for loose crust. Against habit, Adam said nothing for a full mile. The only sounds were boots on clinker and a canteen strap ticking the Jeep door. Signal returned near the Kelbaker Junction. Adam called Lieutenant Collins at 3:28 p.m. He gave the coordinates twice, then texted the photos. Collins asked for weather, wind, and visibility. He told them to stay in town, then rang search and rescue and a tow contractor with desert extraction rigs. Before sundown, a small convoy rolled past the World War II training plaques and onto dirt. Deputies set a perimeter. A medic set a shade. The extraction took hours. Ropes, anchors, and a cautious winch built a path. Forensic techs photographed each step. Nothing moved without a record. When the truck's roof cleared the break, an investigator read the VIN from a mirror. The number matched Dana's registration file. No one said her name. Under tower lights, the text logged exterior condition. Tires were collapsed but intact. Windows failed inward. Sand filled the cab. There was no wallet in the door pockets, no phone on the floor mat. On the rear quarter panel, the triangle decal remained, bleached to gray. A chemist scraped sunburnt paint and corrosion onto sterile foil. A supervisor checked chain of custody tags. Preliminary notes did not match the 2010 assumption. Depth corrosion on exposed steel and UV oxidation on the upper paint suggested a shorter exposure than 11 years. The lower surfaces told a different story, with older oxidation and pitting consistent with long storage out of direct light. One tech wrote an estimate in pencil. Significant sun exposure 6 to 8 years. Not 11. The truck could not have been dropped here in October 2010. Collins closed his notebook and looked at Adam. He kept his voice even. The desert had held a secret and someone had helped it. He ordered a second scene sweep around the rim for drag scars, cable marks, or spilled fasteners. He requested a drone overflight to mark shallow slide lines. He asked for timestamps on every frame. If the truck was moved years later, someone waited for the noise to fade, then acted. Adam stood back from the lights and watched the rig settle onto the flatbed. His hands were still. He did not ask the question out loud. The file on a shelf just changed shape. Who moved the truck and why now? Adam waited outside the light tower while technicians finished their first pass. At 8:12 p.m., Lieutenant Henry Collins called him to the shade tent. A plastic clamshell sat on the table, heat-warped and sand-burned. The label had peeled off, but the foam cutout inside was a perfect outline for a mid-2010 consumer drone. Collins used a multi-tool to pry at the hinge. The lid popped. The bay for the aircraft was empty. The bay for the controller was empty. Collins lifted the foam with tweezers and found a sliver of plastic wedged along the seam. It was a micro SD card. A tech cleaned the contacts with isopropyl and a swab. She slotted the card into a right blocker. The workstation recognized it at 8:19 p.m. volume label. DW_101610. The root directory held a DCIM folder and a small telemetry log. The first clip loaded with a October 16, 2010 date stamp. The embedded EXIF showed a GPS fix near Collins Dry Lake, east of Kelbaker Road. The compass heading drifted between 167 and 182 degrees. Wind noise was high but stable. The camera caught a pickup ladder, a soft-sided rooftop tent, and Dana Whitaker waving at the lens. An adult woman stood beside her, smiling and shading her eyes. That was Mara, 19, in 2010. Both looked sunburned and tired, not distressed. They advanced through short flights and landings. A log line recorded takeoffs at 3:08 p.m., 3:26 p.m., and 4:02 p.m. The last file ran just over 2 minutes. It climbed to a legal recreational ceiling, then panned a slow 270 degrees. The frame locked briefly on a distant rectangle on the horizon. It looked like low structures and stacked containers tucked behind a ridge. The camera dipped and returned to camp. The battery warning sounded. The clip ended with a quick descent. Collins froze the panorama on the rectangle. He marked bearing and sun angle. A tech exported the frame to a still. They printed it on matte paper and wrote the EXIF time under the image. The truck recovered today sat nowhere in that horizon. The camp was within a permitted corridor and map turnout. The ravine with the recovered truck was not in view. These two facts could not share the same day unless the truck moved later. Adam asked for copies. Collins agreed and mirrored the card to 2 encrypted drives. He gave Adam a viewer folder with timestamped stills. Adam signed a receipt. He left the tent and crossed the parking lot to Cole's Jeep. They drove to Redlands in silence, stopped once for gas in Ludlow, and reached Adam's place near midnight. Adam powered on his desktop and opened the stills. He pulled his grandfather's old USGS topos from a flat file and laid them on the desk. The marked camp coordinates aligned with a known spur off Kelbaker Road. Adam traced the panorama's bearing with a straightedge and a protractor. He repeated the line on the topo. The line ran through a patch labeled Dry Lake and extended to a grayscale block with no name. A grandmotherly note in pencil sat in the margin. Private test site idle since the 80s. Bluffs unstable. A void after wind. The handwriting matched older notations in the drawer. Adam took phone photos of the note and the overlay. At 12:47 a.m., Cole texted a satellite image link from a public service. The view dated to late spring 2021. The official access track to that block was a pale scar, washed and overgrown. A fainter split curved in from the southwest, barely visible. It crossed a drainage and joined the block at an oblique angle. Fresh tire ghosts appeared where the faint line met hard ground. Cole sent a second frame with a shallow oil stain along the bend, dark against the sand. Adam printed the satellite stills and taped them to the topo. He marked distances with a ruler, then checked the drone compass headings against the projection. The rectangle in the drone frame matched the block in the satellite image within a few degrees. He wrote the numbers on a yellow sticky. He also wrote a single sentence. If they camped legal at 4:02 p.m., who put the truck in a wash miles away? At 7:10 a.m., Adam carried the print pack back to the sheriff's substation. Collins had arrived early and was reviewing the chain of custody log from the Ravine. He listened without interrupting. He laid Adam's prints beside the drone still. He called the district watch commander and requested preliminary air support to photograph the block from public airspace. He also drafted an affidavit for a search warrant for a privately owned, currently idle test site east of Kelbaker Road, citing the 2010 drone clip, the 2021 satellite patterns, the corrosion estimate, and the recovery location. Cole asked if they were going out there right now. Collins said no. They would not approach a private property without a warrant or a team. He would hold the scene at the Ravine and finish collecting microtrace. He would log every new coordinate and source. If the site was active, someone might move before the paperwork landed. He could not risk tipping a hand with a casual drive-by. Adam stepped outside to clear his head. The morning was already hot. He looked east toward the preserve and thought of his mother pointing a drone at a distant shape. 11 years later, the same shape was still there, and someone had carved a newer road into it. How long had that second track been in use, and who was keeping it quiet? Adam arrived at the substation again at 9:05 a.m. Collins had sent the warrant packet to a judge in Barstow. Approval would take hours. The Ravine site stayed hot, with techs finishing microtrace and drone mapping. Collins ordered Adam and Cole to remain in town. He repeated the rule about private property and the risk of spooking a live site. Adam agreed, but he kept the satellite stills in his pocket. At 10:12 a.m., Deputy Nate Ortiz stopped by their table. He was off shift soon and had been listening to the radio traffic. He said he knew a vantage point on BLM land south of the block. It was outside any fence line. It offered a long look through a telephoto lens. He was clear about his boundaries. He would not enter private land or break the order. He suggested an observation-only run and a fast return. Collins was in an interview room when Nate made the offer. Adam checked the offline maps and said yes. They left Redlands at 11:03 a.m. in Cole's Jeep, carrying water, a first aid kit, and a satellite phone. Nate took the passenger seat with binoculars and a DSLR. Adam sat behind him with the topo and prints. They hit Kelbaker Road after noon and turned onto a graded spur that remained public. At 12:44 p.m., they killed the engine on a rise and scanned the horizon. The air shook in heat ripples. The block of low structures sat where the drone still suggested. No movement, no vehicles, no sound. Nate took a series of long shots with timestamps. He logged bearings for each frame. He narrated for the camera. The southwest approach showed faint track marks, newer than the main access scar. A small dark stain sat along the path. He measured the distance with a rangefinder. He called out 93 yards from the bend to the first container. He kept them on the ridge and refused to move closer. They stayed 20 minutes, then backed out in low gear. At 1:35 p.m., they pointed the Jeep toward Amboy for fuel. Cole wanted a full tank before the return to Redlands. The Amboy station sat just off the National Trails highway. It was quiet. The thermometer over the door read 103 degrees. Cole went inside to pay cash. Adam stood by the pump and checked the phone for service. Nate took the trash to a barrel near the edge of the lot. A silver pickup rolled in without plates on the front bracket. Two men got out. They wore ball caps and long sleeves despite the heat. Adam felt the shift too late. One man asked him for directions to Kelso. Another stepped behind him. Nate called Adam's name, but the second man moved first. Adam got one arm up and turned. The strike caught his shoulder, not his head. He staggered but stayed upright. Nate started toward him, then stopped when the driver lifted his shirt to show a tucked handgun grip. The man never touched it. He did not have to. Cole saw the posture through the window and froze. Adam raised both hands and spoke in a clear voice. He said he would not fight. He said he would go. He stared at the driver and tried to memorize his cheekbone scar and pale eyes. The driver nodded. He told Adam to keep his voice down. He told Nate to stand still and count to 60. The man added one line that mattered. He said, "If you care about that old truck, you should not be here." They pushed Adam into the back seat of the silver pickup. The doors locked. The driver pulled onto the highway and turned east. Adam saw Nate move his hand to his radio mic as they passed. Cole kept his head down and palmed a tracker coin from his key ring. He walked to the Jeep's rear bumper as if checking the spare and pressed the coin onto the metal frame of the silver truck. The coin stuck under the tail lamp. The pickup accelerated. They left the highway after 7 miles and cut onto a sandy 2-track. Adam looked for landmarks. He saw a dry wash, a wind-dropped sign, and a rusted water tank. At 2:21 p.m., they stopped at a rundown bar with boards over half the windows. The sign above the door had missing letters. Inside, the air smelled like old beer and dust. A man with cropped hair and a scar across his cheek watched from a table. The driver told Adam to sit and not talk. Adam obeyed and counted exits, windows, and bodies. He saw a back hall with a prop door. He saw a shelf with electronics and tools. A gray controller sat there, scuffed and familiar. A framed photo hung above the shelf. It showed the low structures at the block from a different angle than the drone had captured in 2010. The date printed on the border read 2016 to 2005. 5 men stood beside a pallet of crates. One had the same cheek scar. A woman crossed the hall and pushed the door wider with her shoulder. Her hair was lighter than Mara's last driver's license photo, but the jawline was the same. She did not look at Adam. She carried a crate and disappeared into the back. Adam did not move. He needed a second look. He needed a name. The driver lowered into a chair across from Adam and laid out the terms. This was a warning. Stop talking to Collins. Stop asking about roads. Stop pointing cameras at old fences. He said accidents happened in the desert when people refused to listen. He wanted a phone call to the sheriff to calm the case. He wanted it today. Adam asked one question. He asked who moved his mother's truck. The driver smiled and said nothing. Outside, the heat warped the view and hid the silver truck's tail lamp. The tracker coin stayed in shadow and sent its silent ping. Who would hear it first? Adam kept his back to the wall and counted the exits again. At 2:34 p.m., the door near the bar swung open. A man in a gray work shirt entered with 2 others. He moved like he owned the room. The driver with the cheek scar called him Victor. The name matched a note from old tips. Victor Salgado, mid-40s, Mojave local with transport ties. He set his phone on the table and studied Adam for a full beat. He asked if Adam planned to keep calling the sheriff after today. Adam said he wanted one thing: the truth about October 2010. Victor said the desert punished people who asked the wrong questions. He said Dana and Mara were not his problem. He said he did not kill anyone. He said he ran supplies and stayed away from families. Adam asked who moved the truck. Victor watched the driver and told him to wait outside. The driver left through the front door without comment. Victor laid out terms in short sentences. Adam would call Lieutenant Collins. He would say the recovered truck closed the loop. He would stop feeding coordinates to deputies. He would stop filming fences, containers, and roads. In exchange, Victor would let Adam walk out. He said one more line. He said Adam could see a friendly face before leaving if he behaved. A woman stepped from the back hallway at 2:41 p.m. Her hair was lighter than the license photo from 2010. Her posture was guarded. She looked at Victor first, then at Adam. She did not smile. Adam spoke her name once, careful with tone. Mara. She said she used another name here. She said she worked the back room and kept inventory. She asked why Adam brought the sheriff back to a dead file. Adam told her the file was never dead. He said the drone video proved a legal camp at 4:02 p.m. on October 16, 2010. He said the truck recovered yesterday did not age 11 years in the sun. Mara kept her eyes on Victor while Adam spoke. Victor said the clip proved nothing about what happened after sundown. Mara asked for water. Victor nodded. She brought Adam a plastic bottle and stood near the door. She asked one question that mattered. She asked why Adam kept searching when everyone else stopped. Adam said he was done with guesses. He said the corrosion told a clock and someone set that clock. He said the drone still showed a block of structures. He said the satellite frames showed a newer approach track from the southwest. Victor lost patience at 2:49 p.m. He said this was not a court. He said Adam would make the call now. He pushed his phone across the table. He wanted a speaker call to Collins. He wanted soft language about closure. He wanted it recorded. Adam said he would make one call to confirm he was alive. Victor said no. He said the call carried conditions or there would be no call. A horn sounded outside at 2:51 p.m., short and sharp. The driver returned and leaned close to Victor. He whispered about a signal they did not recognize. Victor told him to sweep the lot and watch the highway. The driver left again. Adam kept his face still. He did not look toward the door. He thought about the tracker coin under the tail lamp. He hoped Cole had kept quiet and called it in. Mara moved behind Adam and bent as if to pick up a dropped napkin. She spoke without moving her head. She said there was a side door behind the bar. She said it opened to a narrow service alley. She said a shed stood 10 yards past the alley. She said a friend might be there. Adam asked, "Cole?" Mara did not answer. She only said, "Do not run. Wait for sirens." Victor tapped the table at 2:55 p.m. He told Adam to dial. Adam picked up the phone and pressed the keypad slowly. He entered Collins' number and hit call. He spoke first when the line opened. He said he was safe. He said he needed Collins to record this call. He said he had new information on a private site east of Kelbaker Road. Victor's jaw tightened. He reached for the phone. A second horn sounded from the lot, longer this time. Tires crunched. Victor shifted his focus to the door and cursed. He told his men to pack anything with a serial number. He told Mara to stay in sight. He told Adam not to move. Adam heard a distant siren then, thin under the wind. He knew Cole and Nate had given the tracker a path. Victor faced Adam again at 2:58 p.m. He spoke with care. He said Mara worked here by choice. He said she owed him protection money and labor. He said Dana had pulled a weapon and forced a bad night. He said the accident was her fault. Adam looked at Mara. She did not nod. She did not deny it. She stared at the floor and asked Victor if she could step outside for air. Victor unlocked the back hall door and let her pass. He kept Adam in the chair and raised his voice. He told his men to move faster. He walked to the front window and lifted the edge of a curtain with 2 fingers. Red and blue flashed across sun-bleached glass. He turned back toward Adam and reached for his waistband. The sirens were close now, and so was the choice. Patrol units reached the bar at 3:02 p.m. National Trails Highway, Amboy. Lights stayed on. Sirens dropped low. Deputies formed a contact team at the front door and a cover team along the east wall. Deputy Nate Ortiz identified himself and pointed out the silver pickup. He gave the last known direction of travel and the elapsed time since the abduction. The tracker app showed steady pings from the tail lamp area. A supervisor logged the device ID and time. Inside, Victor Salgado lifted the curtain again and watched dust clouds build at the highway. He told 2 men to stage boxes near the back door. He told one to stay with Adam. He kept his right hand near his waistband but did not draw. The driver with the cheek scar returned and said the lot was no longer clear. Victor swore and ordered silence. At 3:05 p.m., the sheriff's contact team made entry. A deputy announced presence and orders. Hands rose. Adam held his palms open and stayed seated. The driver set his hands on the tabletop. Victor hesitated 2 beats and then complied. 2 deputies crossed to Adam and moved him behind the stack of chairs. A third secured Victor and the driver without incident. No shots were fired. No one ran. Collins arrived 3 minutes later from the Ravine scene. He cleared the threshold and made a fast pass through the rooms. He saw the shelf with electronics and tools. He saw a gray drone controller with scuffs along the gimbal guard. He pointed and told a tech to photograph before touching. He asked for a chain of custody bag and a serialized evidence seal. The controller's model matched a 2010 mid-range unit. The serial plate was scratched but legible. Mara stood in the back hallway with a deputy. She had her hands open and visible. She gave her name as Mara Whitaker and repeated it without prompting. Collins nodded and asked if she was injured. She said no. He asked if she would speak with a female deputy in the open, near the doorway. She agreed. He told the deputy to record audio and capture a fresh consent on camera. Cole stepped from behind a patrol car, bruised but steady. He told Collins about the tracker coin and the placement. Ortiz confirmed the beacon path and showed the map with timestamps. Collins instructed him to screenshot and email the log to the case account. He assigned a deputy to guard the silver pickup until a second tow arrived. He ordered photos of the tail lamp cavity and a search for tool marks. A team secured the back shed at 3:16 p.m. The lock was new. The hinges were old. They photographed the hasp, then cut it with a bolt cutter under video. Inside, they found a stack of pallets, 2 plastic bins with shipping labels shaved off, and a tarp covering hand trucks. A clipboard hung from a nail. The pages showed dates, quantities, and initials. No names. The earliest entry on the sheet was April 2015. The latest was last week. A tech sealed the clipboard in a bag and logged the time. In the bar, the framed photo came off the wall after a full image pass. The match showed 2016 to 2005 in a corner. 5 men stood by the block structures. 1 matched the cheek scar. A second matched a man in cuffs by the door. The printed corner held a faint shop stamp from a mini-lab in Barstow. Another tech bagged a half-empty motor oil bottle from a crate near the back exit. The cap threads were gritty with sand. The label brand matched residue found along the southwest approach track in the satellite still. Collins called the watch commander and confirmed the warrant status for the test site east of Kelbaker Road. The judge had the affidavit and was reviewing. Collins requested a standby tactical element for scene security once the warrant landed. He also asked air support for a low, legal overflight to update the block's current layout. He kept his language tight and fact-based. He avoided speculation. At 3:29 p.m., a paramedic checked Adam's shoulder and cleared him. Adam asked about Mara. Collins said she was safe and cooperating. He did not elaborate. He turned to Victor and read a short advisement. Victor said he wanted a lawyer. Collins stopped the questions and shifted to evidence-only tasks. Mara agreed to a recorded statement in segments. She confirmed she had used another name at the bar. She said Victor controlled the storage and the runs. She said she had seen a gray controller for years and believed it came from a campsite theft long ago. She did not describe violence. She said she had been told to avoid the ridge block and never to discuss it with customers. She said Victor used the phrase idle land, no questions. The tow arrived for the silver pickup at 3:41 p.m. A deputy photographed the tail lamp housing. A small circular adhesive mark sat on the painted metal near the lamp bucket. The tracker coin had peeled a thin film of dust. The tech swabbed the area for trace and bagged the swab. By 3:52 p.m., Collins had an email from the court. The warrant for the private test site was signed. He assembled an entry plan with a small team, a document custodian, and 2 crime scene technicians. He scheduled the move within the hour and kept Adam and Cole at the substation for safety. He assigned a victim advocate to Mara and arranged transport to town for a medical check and an interview room. The bar went quiet as deputies shut off the light bar wash. Boxes were sealed. Photos were labeled. Every movement had a number. Adam stood by the door and watched a deputy carry out the gray controller in a sealed bag. The line back to October 2010 had a wait again. The next move would test it. The warrant team formed up at 4:27 p.m. east of Kelbaker Road. Air support orbited at legal altitude and sent live stills. The block sat quiet. 2 containers, a low shed, and a roofless cinder structure formed an L. Collins split the team into entry, security, and documentation. He placed a document custodian at the tailgate table. He repeated the limits of the warrant and the order of search. Every bag got a number. At 4:41 p.m., the entry element breached the cinder doorway. No persons inside. No animals. No traps. The security element cleared the containers and called all clear. A tech photographed the ground before anyone crossed it. The surface showed recent tire ripple and 2 drag lines that converged near the shed. One drag line ran to a hard point bolted into a concrete footing. The eyelet showed steel burnishing consistent with a cable under load. A second line showed softer grooves, likely a tow strap. The first container held pallets, shrink wrap, and 2 hand trucks. Serial labels were shaved. A cordless winch sat on the floor with a frayed steel cable. The drum carried melt marks and sand embedded in grease. A tech swabbed the cable and bagged the fray. The second container held bins of mixed hardware, oil, and coolant. 3 quarts of the same motor oil brand found at the bar sat on a shelf. One open quart had a date code from 2019. Collins had the custodian log brand, size, and lot. Inside the cinder structure, a workbench held a metal punch set and a box of rivets. A damaged VIN plate lay in a tray with filings. The plate matched the size of Dana's truck VIN shield, but the numbers were hammered to illegible. A lens shard sat beside it. A tech used a photo scale and bagged the shard. Later, a lab would compare it to the headlamp make for Dana's model year. Near the door, a coil of nylon webbing held a steel hook with a safety latch. The latch showed paint transfer. The color trended toward the gray on Dana's quarter panel. At 5:02 p.m., the team photographed the southwest approach. The faint road line matched the public satellite frame. The shoulder showed a fresh oil halo and a cluster of scuffed footprints. A single boot print had a tear at the heel cup. A deputy took gel lifts and casts. A small bag of socket heads, dusted red, lay under creosote. The sizes matched the fasteners removed from Dana's truck roof rack during the recovery. Collins kept one eye on the time. The sun would drop fast behind the mesas. He directed a short grid to the west of the shed for microtrace. A tech recovered a cable stop with set screw marks. Another flagged a cut section of 5/16 cable with dimples. A winch manufacturer later confirmed the dimples were from a specific brand of compact fairlead. At 5:29 p.m., Collins called the substation. He asked for Mara's interview status. The victim advocate reported that Mara had agreed to provide a recorded timeline from 2011 forward. She placed herself here only for work and storage. She described offloading and staging, not towing. She said Victor controlled the when and who. She described a night, several years after the search cooled, when a beat-up pickup arrived near midnight. She heard a winch, scraping, then silence. The next morning, the coil of cable was shorter. Collins logged that statement as uncorroborated until the physical evidence could carry it. He returned to the footing with the eyelet. A tech measured gouge depth, angle, and spacing. He photographed a cable burr left in the steel. He pried it out and bagged it. Outside, the team located a shallow berm with a faint slide path. The angle matched the drone's panorama bearing from 2010. The path pointed toward the wash system that led to the ravine miles away. At 6:03 p.m., generators rattled to life for more light. The team used a drone to map the block for a 3D model. Ground control points were set and logged. The drone produced orthomosaic stills with centimeter scale. Collins dictated a brief for the prosecutor. He listed the cable eyelet, winch marks, oil brand overlap, the VIN plate, the lens shard, and the slide path alignment. He emphasized the corrosion estimate from the recovered truck. He connected the timing to the clipboard dates at the bar's shed. He left motive blank. Back in town at 7:22 p.m., Mara completed a medical check. No injuries. She signed a consent to share her statement with the prosecutor's office. A detective scheduled a follow-up with an attorney present. Adam waited in a quiet room down the hall. He had copies of the drone stills and his grandfather's topo. He did not knock on Mara's door. He understood sequence. At 8:05 p.m., Collins briefed Adam and Cole. He kept it factual. The site was active as a staging point into 2021. It carried the right tools to move a disabled truck. It carried residue that matched the approach line. It carried fragments that might tie to Dana's model year. He said nothing about guilt. He said the file had shifted from missing to a criminal concealment of evidence, at minimum. He said they would look for human remains, but not tonight. Adam nodded once. He asked one question. He asked if the site could also explain the lost years. Collins said sites like this explain logistics, not choices. Then he looked at the gray controller in its sealed bag and said choices leave prints, too. The lights clicked off in the briefing room, but one conflict stayed on the board. Who timed the drop to the exact year the search went quiet?